absolutely beautiful April day.
Typical Indiana.
Yeah.
Yes, typical. We expect weather like this every day.
Thanks, Elaine.
Knock on wood. Okay. I'm not responsible for any of the bad weather, even though we did turn off the boilers at the prop the day before we got sleet. So, not saying it's our fault, but I promise you it's going to get better. I'm Eli Brown. I am the executive director here at the Propylaeum. Thank you all for coming to our Women's Enrichment series. We're always so excited to have people, sorry, there's so many microphones. We're always so excited to have you all here to bring in new faces into the Propylaeum. If you're not familiar, we've been in this house for 100 years. So we're celebrating our 100th year at 1410 North Delaware, but our organization is 135 years old. We've been working to lift up women in women's leadership programming, arts and cultural programming, and now historic preservation. So we've been doing that for a long time. And just to make the pitch, we're always looking for more people to come and join us. So if you're interested in becoming a member of the Propylaeum or coming back and taking a tour or having an event here, please let myself or Julia know. Yeah, it's the coolest place on Delaware. You can tell Charles at the Benjamin Harrison Home. I suck it up. It's the coolest place, yeah. So before we get started, I do want to preview a couple of upcoming events. All of our events can be found the same way you got tickets for this event if you registered through on the events page at thepropylaeum.org. If you get close to the Propylaeum, we're the only Propylaeum, so if you Google it, you should find us. Coming up on next Wednesday at the 26th, it's a Zoom event at 7 p.m. It's our historic preservation series. It's going to go into the history of Woodruff Place, which is Indy's first suburb. If you've ever been through there, gorgeous fountains, go to the flea market, all that kind of stuff. It's an amazing place. That's a free event. All you have to do is register online. Coming up May 3rd, the second in our Anonymous series, which features women whose stories were not told or recorded or celebrated like they should be. It is the Women of Indiana Avenue. Now, we all know about the amazing Madam C.J. Walker, but who were the other amazing women at the turn of the century that made Indiana Avenue the way it is? We're very lucky to have Samson Livingston, who runs Through Two Eyes walking tours. He will be giving that presentation. On Tuesday, May 9th, bring friends, we're doing a sip and paint. So come here, you don't have to have any kind of talent, because I can do it, so I'm not artistic. But we'll be doing it in the carriage house, have a glass of wine, paint a beautiful picture. If it's not beautiful, you have a glass of wine. So, and a heads up for our prop members, we do have our annual meeting coming up on May 11th. Make sure you sign up for that. That's where we handle our annual reports and all that, elect our new board members, which is very exciting. And keep an eye out. It'll be coming out pretty soon. It's on our website, but there'll be flyers, and you'll probably get something in the mail for our porch concert series this summer. We have 3 Fridays. We do a free concert off the porch. We have the band up here. You can bring a picnic lunch. We have
Wine.
Tulip tree creamery. Yes, wine. We always have wine. We'll have tulip tree creamery. We'll have cheese boxes for sale. We'll have wine for sale. You can bring food. The only thing we ask is you don't bring any outside alcohol, but come in, camp out, and have a great time. We're going to have Teresa Reynolds and the Slick Towns will be our first one, and that's Friday, June 2nd. We're also going to have Bashiri Assad on Friday, July 7th. I know, he's in high demand.
Yeah.
And John Alvarado is returning, so if you got to see him last year, he played the flamenco guitar. It was absolutely beautiful, and that will be August 11th. So checking out the page, there'll be more events coming up as we go along. Without much further ado, I'll get on to the sponsors today for our program. I'll start with our bronze sponsors, and we're so thankful for all of our sponsors. We are a 501c3 nonprofit. We exist because of our sponsors and our members and our donors. It's how we keep a 130-year-old house operating. Yes, it's been a day. Thank you so much to our bronze sponsors, Caballo Associates, FEG Investment Advisors, the Lilly Endowment, Taft, the National Bank of Indianapolis, and Peg and Mike Kennedy from Realtors with FC Tucker and Company. Our silver sponsors, thank you to Dawn Bennett, Bedell Financial, Bose McKinney and Evans, Old National Bank, Barnes Thornburg. Thank you to our gold sponsors, Kenneth and Deborah Rankins. And our title sponsor, Marianne Glick. And I'm so excited. I get to introduce Marianne every time, and I keep trying to come up with something super exciting. But Marianne is just this breath of fresh air, and it's just wonderful to be around her. And I know all of you have gotten a chance to meet her. She embodies what it's like to be a woman leader, and it's exciting for me to be able to introduce her. So without further ado, Marianne Glick.
This one?
Yeah.
There's like all these mics up here. I don't know what to do.
It's like a press conference.
Well, welcome everyone. It's great to see you here on such a gorgeous night. Our theme for the series this year has been lifelong learning. And this is a series to honor my mother, who herself was a lifelong learner for me and for my family, as well as for our community. Those of you that have been here before have probably heard this story, but for those of you that have not, my mother came from a very challenging beginning. Her mother died in childbirth, and her father left her at the hospital. So she was orphaned. And the family that adopted her, her adoptive father died when she was 10 years old, leaving she and her mother with $10,000. Her mother had never worked outside the home. And so they sort of depended on the kindness of relatives to get by. Luckily, my mom was a really smart girl and did quite well in school. She wanted to go to college very much and was accepted, but her mother hid her acceptance letter because her mother didn't want her to leave home.
Oh.
So she studied on her own. She helped my dad found the company. She did all of the books. She helped him get the construction materials. In fact, she did all the family finances throughout their entire marriage. She studied art and was a wonderful collector of glass. And at 85 years old, she wrote her autobiography. To me, that's pretty amazing. So this series is to honor her. I believe she's been gone 11 years now. I would also like to honor another woman who stood in this room many decades ago, and her name was Mrs. Hannah Lindner. Hannah was born in Hamburg, Germany, and raised in Dayton, Ohio, where she and her husband ran a dairy farm for nearly a decade prior to moving to Indianapolis. Hannah and her husband David founded Lindner Dairy Centers, and many of you would be familiar with Lindner ice cream. She didn't know anything about the dairy business, but she didn't let that stop her. She took dairy manufacturing courses at Purdue and electrical refrigeration courses at Arsenal Tech, and she leveraged that education to become president of the Lindner Dairy Centers from 1940 to 1962, and was also chairman of the board. She served as president of many other organizations and was listed in the Who's Who of American Women and honored by the Indy Chamber as Outstanding Businesswoman of the Year in 1958. Probably one of the first women to receive that honor. She was also a member of the Prop. During her lifetime, she visited 90 countries and circled the globe 3 times. This was a woman who was an extremely curious lifelong learner. We are very fortunate tonight to have another lifelong learner here to talk to us. Our guest speaker, Angela Freeman. Yay! Now, Angela's astrological sign is Cancer, which means that she's a water baby, and she loves anything to do with the water, the sun, sailing, swimming, snorkeling, scuba diving. Needless to say, Angela loves traveling quite a bit, and her trips are usually near the ocean where she recharges to help her in her successful business career. However, she didn't grow up near the water. She was raised in a small Appalachian town called Berea, Kentucky, and I've actually been there when I was doing training for Chrysler. She skipped the first grade, smart girl, and graduated high school at age 15. Amazing. She went to college at 16 and is a first-generation college graduate. She's always excelled in math and science, which was fully realized when she began studying genetics and molecular biology in graduate school at the University of Louisville, where she fell in love with how DNA and RNA are tools to distinguish species of organisms, including fungus, mice, and humans, which she studied in the lab. So her path and my path are like completely different. Amazing, really smart. She worked in the research lab at the University of Louisville studying genetic markings for birth defects. She continued this work for more than 15 years as a genetic researcher at Eli Lilly before earning her law degree. She is such an underachiever, I don't know why. So she got her law degree from Indiana University. Hopefully she will share with us her inspiration for her professional pivot for earning her law degree. Clearly, Angela is a lifelong learner. She's a partner with Barnes Thornburg in their intellectual property and patent division and life sciences practice group. 2 years ago, Angela was named the host of a new monthly podcast with the IBJ called the Freedom Forum with Angela B. Freeman. This podcast explores the intersection of business, race, and gender in Hoosier State by interviewing influential leaders and executives making a real change and impact in diversity, equity, and inclusion. Angela continues to leverage her powerful voice from lab to law office to podcasting by sharing impactful stories which serve as markers for the much-needed change in our community. It's an honor to welcome you, Angela. Thank you. Thank you.
Well. All right. Thank you, Mary Ann, for that very kind and generous introduction. And I want to thank Kara and Allie and Julia, many of which I just met this evening, but all the organizers of this event for having me here to speak with you all. Such a lovely audience. We packed the house, everybody. Thanks for that. And I'll say good evening to everyone, and thank you for attending this final event of the 2022-2023 Marilyn K. Glick's Women Enrichment Series, focused this year, as Mary Ann said, on lifelong learning. I'm particularly honored to have been offered a keynote speaking opportunity. I realize you don't get that many keynote speaking opportunities these days. So thank you for that. I even impressed my husband, you know. But I'm particularly honored to have been asked to speak among so many esteemed women leaders that have addressed this amazing audience this year, including Lori White and Deborah Curtis and Sue Ellsperman and Maureen Weber, true advocates for early and post-secondary learning opportunities. I'm prayerful that, something I say this evening empowers, enlightens, or motivates one of you or more of you as I reflect on my personal and professional journey of lifelong learning. So just a bit about me to set the stage, and Mary Ann did a great job of giving you some of the nuggets of where I come from. But I want to set the stage, the background for this address, should I say, that I've titled Leveraging the Power of Being the Only or One of Few Through a Lifetime of Learning. First, I was raised from a mighty strong familial foundation. I've enjoyed the benefit of supportive grandparents, parents, aunts, uncles, married for 20 to 50 years my whole life. Both parents raised me with meager means. We had little money, but enough to get by. Critically, I have a mother who today is my very best friend and who has believed my whole life that I am truly special and gifted, and that God has a particular blessing on my life. In fact, I have a little anecdote I want to share with you about my mom, which makes this topic of lifelong learning so special to me. So when I was younger, my mom would always tell me that I was talented and gifted. And I consider talent things like being able to sing and dance and play an instrument. You know, talents you watch today on America's Got Talent or American Idol or, you know, The Voice. But I could do none of those things. So I really didn't understand why she would constantly tell me that I was talented. I remember having a conversation with my mom one day and asking her why she kept telling me that I was so special and talented when I could do none of the things that I considered to demonstrate talent. And she said, "Angela, you're smart. You're really brilliant. You have the gift and ability to learn anything and do anything you set your mind to." Now, at the time, I thought, see, that's what I'm talking about. That's a loving mom who says to a child, says something to a child who truly has no talent. I mean, that's what she said, right? And we laughed about that for years because I didn't buy it at the time. But after all these years, I've absolutely been made a believer that she hit the nail on the head so long ago. My talent, my gift, is the ability and the willingness to learn and to learn from anyone who's willing to teach me. In fact, over this life and career journey, I've truly proven to myself and to others that I have an innate propensity for learning, some of which I'll share with you this evening. Now, beyond my family, Mary Ann mentioned, I'm a very proud country girl. In fact, I got a t-shirt that says, "I'm a proud country girl." I'm from Eastern Appalachian, Kentucky. I grew up in the small town of Berea, Kentucky that Mary Ann mentioned, the home of Berea College. Some of you may have heard of it. Berea College was the first college in the South to racially integrate and to co-educate both genders. Berea College has had no tuition since 1892, but it requires that every student works a work-study job. And while I didn't appreciate it growing up, as I've gotten older, I believe that backdrop of living in a small college town where diversity, equity, and inclusion, education, and work ethic were the foundational principles of its largest institution just doubled down on my family's own beliefs and values and instilled in me that same appreciation and value system, particularly coming from a diverse background with no pedigree and no privilege. Growing up in Berea was really a wonderful experience. Small town country living, where I was encouraged and enriched and educationally empowered to aspire to goals I didn't even know existed and to be my very best self. My parents, teachers, church members, peers, and community supported my excellence and my exploration in the arts, in drama, in sports, in leadership, and many other opportunities, especially as I began to excel in math and science or STEM very, very early on. My rural community provided me many exposure opportunities for which I am deeply grateful and taught me to be open to learning, again, from anyone willing to teach me. However, the opportunities to see representation of diverse professional women, particularly in STEM careers, for a girl like me in the community was significantly limited and frankly was a void. We now know that if you can see us, you can be us. But I didn't have that benefit as a child. It was simply non-existent. So I've truly been the face of diversity in my community my whole life, always being the only one or one of few. The first woman of color, the only diverse woman, or the only African American or Black woman in my middle school AP chemistry class. To be sweetheart queen or on my high school homecoming court, president and valedictorian of my high school senior class. To double major in biology and chemistry in undergrad or in my grad school molecular biology lab. I was one of the very few African American female research scientists at Eli Lilly Company during my 12-year career there, and one of the few African American females in my evening law school class. And in January of this year, I became the first African American female equity partner in the Indianapolis headquarters office of one of the top 100 law firms in the country, Barnes Thornburg. Now put this in context. This makes me only the second African American female to ever make equity partner at my law firm in our almost 100-year history, which has occurred 20 years after the first black female partner, my good friend and dear partner and mentor Don Roseman, became the first partner, African American female partner at the firm ever. So I know all about being the only one or one of few because I've been that my whole life. And while I appreciate how different and absolutely challenging of an experience that being the only one or one of few may be, the learning opportunities that I'll describe are very much tied to that position. In other words, so many learning opportunities I've enjoyed have step by step culminated into my current career and community roles. So tonight, rather than focusing on the challenges that we know and appreciate exist and must be overcome in being the only one or one of few, particularly in a corporate organization or department in Indiana and the Midwest, I'd like to talk about how we learn to ultimately leverage our position, our power, and our privilege, even if we don't feel like we have much, to become exposed to the opportunities that not only benefit us, but influence the betterment of the next generation. In fact, I would purport, as I do believe, that there are some unique learning opportunities that can and should be leveraged when you are the only one or one of few diverse representatives in a majority community or organization. This is necessary to maximize your impact and your social or political capital to ensure that you and other qualified women can find a home in your organization. In other words, I believe as women, it's important that we each accept and satisfy our responsibility to make sure that whether we are the only, one of few, the first or not, that we certainly are not the last, as Vice President Kamala Harris said during the inauguration. And that we help other women, particularly diverse women, pursue excellence in whatever fashion they choose and are qualified. For example, when I was at Lilly during the 2008 recession, in fear of potential layoffs, so many of my colleagues were considering backup career options, for which I realized I had none. I had no clue what a scientist does professionally when they don't want to ascend the standard scientific career path of getting a PhD and becoming a principal investigator of a lab. And while I didn't know what options were available to me, I knew definitively what I didn't want to do. So after going to a Lilly seminar where a gentleman who had an MD and JD was discussing the legal and ethical issues around personalized medicine, who owned the genomic data that we were generating and the privacy issues and cybersecurity issues and all those things that were fully in my area of scientific focus, I was introduced to the concept of law as a career choice. I only knew one lawyer at the time, and she was a Lilly attorney who introduced me to the concept of being a patent lawyer and to patent law. This very niche and specialized legal practice at the intersection of law and science and engineering that married the two sectors in the way that I was simply unaware. The whole concept was absolutely fascinating to me, and it also meant that I would not have to forgo my whole scientific career to start completely over in a legal career path. Instead, my scientific career was a requisite foundation for such a legal pivot. Now, while this concept was intriguing, I had no idea what was required to effectuate such a career transition. So I spent another year speaking with patent attorneys at Lilly and all over Indianapolis to learn what was required, learning about the LSAT, learning about the IU McKinney Evening Law Program, which would be the only avenue for me to attend law school considering I had a family, a mortgage, and a full-time job. How am I going to go to day program? But I have a whole life going on. So in total, I spent about 2 to 3 years learning about what it would take to make the career transition, getting a plan together, and then another 3.5 years of actually attending law school at night to make that same transition. So while professionally it looks pretty seamless, if you look at my resume, I was employed the whole time. I worked a full-time job, but the reality is the learning curve and the work ethic to get to that point was really intense. However, in the absence of such knowledge from other sources, that's the hustle that's required when you simply are not exposed and don't know what options and opportunities are available to you. In such circumstances, you must be willing to learn. I'll say it again, and I'm going to repeat saying it, from whoever who's willing to teach you. And oftentimes, particularly if you're in highly technical or specialized field like STEM and law, those folks with the knowledge and the expertise and the power to make a move on your behalf may not necessarily look like you or even be familiar to you. In fact, I relied on all kinds of diverse folks to champion and support my career and causes in ways and places that I could have never imagined when I was in Berea. Specifically, in my own scientific experience and IP practice, I have absolutely been taught and trained by so many exceptional legal practitioners, most of whom have been Caucasian males, who have invested their time and expertise in me. In retrospect, in almost all of those interactions, I've been able to develop lasting and deep trusting relationship with these white men for reasons that I still don't understand. Maybe because they never considered me a threat, maybe because I was always authentic and transparent and gave them the freedom to be the same. I realized that all the powerful Caucasian or white men who have championed me over the course of my scientific and legal career have also become true friends and partners. They would confide in me about challenges and issues they were facing that I appreciated was well above my pay grade. I had no business knowing some of that stuff. But in developing those relationships, those mentors became invested and committed to help me meet my career objectives. And in turn, they used their social and political capital, sometimes unsuccessfully, to promote my career ambitions. That's what we today call sponsorship. And I recognize that I've been the beneficiary of such sponsorship and mentorship by majority males my whole career. I've also learned that your attitude, your demeanor, and your professionalism should convey in all your interactions that excellence is your goal. And that you're open and willing to learn, y'all say it for me, from whoever who's willing to teach you. You know it. Even if they don't praise you, they provide you harsh but constructive criticism. I got some associates here, they can give an amen on that. Or if you are simply learning what not to do, you should always convey your desire to get better. We must always be open and flexible enough to learn from different people so that you're exposed to so many different styles and ways to do the same thing. And then you use those best practices of others to develop your own style and your subject matter confidence and a track record of excellence. Over these years, based on the learnings from so many diverse folks, I've developed my own style, my own practice, and in the process, I've developed a brand of excellence in STEM and IP law with my colleagues, my clients, and in my community. In doing so, I've demonstrated that being a non-traditional IP practitioner, an older African-American woman who graduated from the part-time evening program of the local law school after a whole first career is not a hindrance or an exception to excellent performance. To the contrary, all of that makes me a huge asset. If anything, I've been very successful in my legal practice and my scientific career because I'm different than every one of my colleagues. And I own that difference proudly, authentically, in all of its embodiments, whether it's my natural hair, my country twang, or my cultural experiences, or my extroverted enjoyment of talking to and learning from all kinds of people. I found over the years that my pride and comfort in my own skin, coupled with my confidence in my technical expertise, and the genuine desire to have positive impact, particularly in my current career, is a clear recipe to accelerated career progression and advancement. I've also learned that my authenticity has calmed the discomfort of some and has endeared others to support and invest in me and my career growth in a way that has allowed me to establish my own social and political capital in my organization and community in order to effectuate positive change. So another thing I've learned about being the only one or one of few is to earn and then positively leverage your social or political capital in order to influence larger or broader initiatives that you care about. For me, my passions have always been centered around increasing diversity, equity, and inclusion of women in STEM and now law, particularly IP and patent law, where only 1.7% of U.S. patent practitioners are diverse females. And I'm very proud to say that I've been formally recognized as a diversity champion in every organization to which I've significantly committed myself, which to me means that I've been able to grow and leverage my political capital or social capital to effectuate some positive cultural change for the corporate organization or community organization in which I've vested. That's how you learn to leverage the power of being the only one or one of few. You transform the road and the journey you took and the environments and organizations in which you work to make it less burdensome and more equitable for those coming after you. I fully recognize that sometimes, particularly as women, because you're the only one or one of few, you don't have or feel like you have the social or political capital to make changes in the organization or to even use your voice. In those situations, I would encourage you to be smart, be strategic, and be selective in the battles you fight. But yes, you be vocal. I have strategically and boldly exercised many opportunities to spend my social or political capital in my professional career to advocate against unfair policies or practices perpetuated by my established leadership, whether in corporate or community organizations. And while in the moment I experienced a lot of trepidation and anxiety and uncertainty in doing so, I've always been committed to advocating for myself, for what's right, and those like me who are not in the room or did not have a voice to advocate for themselves. And in each instance, I've ultimately been rewarded for my candor, for my leadership, and my authenticity, typically in the form of additional or elevated leadership or exposure opportunities, which has provided me the platform to drive real change. We all have the obligation to use our privilege and our power, our position, our political capital, even if you're the only one or one of few, to better the organizations and communities in which we commit in order to ensure they are better for the generations coming after us. That's what my scientific and legal mentors have done for me, and is what I try to do every day for my successors and my team members and my mentees. But let me also say, and this may be a little controversial, All the data and stats around DE&I in every industry, particularly the legal industry, show that the largest beneficiaries of corporate DE&I programs and initiatives are Caucasian or white women. However, in all transparency, there's not too much data that demonstrates that those benefits are being transferred on to other diverse women. So particularly for this audience, I would just humbly assert that if you are a majority woman and you've benefited from DE&I initiatives because you have a unique power or privilege in your organization, whether you know it or not, I believe you have an even greater responsibility to wield that power and utilize your position in a way that empowers other women and particularly diverse women who have not benefited from DE&I initiatives, as our numbers have not grown at all, and in some industries, they've even decreased. Madeleine Albright exclaimed that there's a special place in hell for women who don't support other women. And I would assert that sentiment extends to women's support of all women, including diverse women, okay? As women, we fully recognize that we don't always get the opportunity to demonstrate our skills and leadership abilities within the workplace. In such contexts, I've also learned that getting involved in broader initiatives that you're passionate about also allows you to demonstrate leadership when you may not have those same opportunities within your professional environment. More so, it allows you to contribute to the betterment of an organization's culture, diversity outcomes, and to solve problems or issues outside of the business context, which is typically good for work-life balance and for our own mental health. Giving back to others less fortunate or less established than us should be a part of everyone's societal commitment and obligation. For example, during my first or second year as an associate attorney at Barnes Thornburg, I was fortunate enough to be elected onto the board of directors of Women in High Tech, a local nonprofit organization that focuses on promoting and advancing women in STEM. Having a board position for 7 years and particularly becoming the first